work on the Z23 grant project with the BCCS and Dr. Richard Sebastian, who is the Director of Technology for the BCCS. I got a jump. And I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what we've been doing statewide, but first my colleagues are going to tell you about what we've done together in developing OER and our experiences of our online courses. So I'll pass it over to Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Quarles. I am an adjunct instructor for Germana, and Patrick's jumping again. He makes me nervous when he jumps. And I'm working on my first OER course this semester. Really, this is the second iteration. And so, Cheryl, should we let everyone else introduce themselves before we go into the other stuff?
Yeah, I think that would work. How about Sean?
Okay.
Hello, I'm Sean Shields. I am a professor of chemistry, associate professor of chemistry at Germana, and I am teaching Chemistry 111 and Chemistry 112 online, and it's been a lot of fun, and they are both OER courses, and I'm looking forward to talking about that with you. And Lee?
Hi, my name is Lee Hancock. I am chairman of the English department at Germana Community College, as well as chair of the Distance Learning Committee. And I am teaching my first OER class this spring. I'm teaching 2 sections of English 111, which is College Composition 1, without the textbooks. And I will be talking to you about some of the realities of OER once you are in the thick of it.
Okay, I think I'm going to get started by talking about some of the more day-to-day, just getting started and kind of general OER things. And I think I'm going to skip a little bit ahead to my slide. Can everyone see that? If you can see that, would you mind clapping? Just, yay, okay, good. Thank you. So for me, and for a lot of faculty, I think that many of us who believe in the OER movement, so this open movement, have been teaching freely for a while. And when I say freely, I mean, we've been providing materials to our students at either no cost or low cost through a variety of legal or sometimes illegal means, hopefully not illegal, but less open means. So by that I mean we've found resources that are openly available online at no cost, but not openly licensed, so that you can't necessarily save them or download them or reproduce them to use in your class in that way. Now, they might be protected under something like fair use for education, but they're not open, and most importantly, they're not necessarily redistributable or something that you can remix and reuse in your own way. And so when Cheryl first got ready to take her leave and I learned more about what the community college system was doing with OER, I really wanted to be involved. And unlike everybody else on the panel today, I'm just an adjunct instructor, and I think there's certainly a little bit of fear for an adjunct instructor to go open because I don't have a full-time teaching job. I just teach because I love it. And so I'm creating materials that are openly licensed that someone else can teach. And so, of course, that's a little scary because I'm not guaranteed to have a class even, next summer or next fall. So it's definitely a different mindset, and you have to believe in the spirit of open and what open can do for the teaching community, but also for students who, maybe access to resources for class, whether that's the textbook or other technology you might have required them to have was a barrier to them being successful in their education. So, on my OER journey, so thinking at just like kind of the course level, I partnered with another adjunct faculty member who I think is listening. Deb Burden and I worked together to design an English 112 class. And I put on my slide that for me, and something I would recommend for everybody, is that as you're preparing to move into this world, if you can collaborate with someone, you will be much more successful at the adaptation and adoption process, because Deb and I work very differently. Although we're both English faculty, we have just different organizational strategies. We're drawn to different readings. We have different strengths. I really prefer building assessment and building discussions, where Deb's really amazing at finding reading materials and resources that are openly licensed. And so we were a great team in that regard. But even if you're not a great team, or you don't have these, really nicely matching but different skill sets, being able to work with someone and bat ideas off someone helps you design something that's more adaptable and adaptable to someone else. So if you're like me, someone who's maybe taught online, obviously if you're at this conference, you're comfortable with technology, you can kind of get stuck in your own little, I call it bubble, right? Where, I know how I design a course at this point. I know quality matters. And so I get kind of stuck in this little box that I've put myself in, because I know how to do these things and I've seen it work with students. But that doesn't mean it would be very adoptable or adaptable to another instructor. You know what I mean? Because I've really kind of put like the Jenny spin on it. And so Deb really knocked me out of that and pushed me to think, oh, that is a better way, or I see how that could be more easily adopted later. So it's definitely something to consider. And as a faculty member who's going to maybe be like, I'm not a builder. I want to offer things freely or openly to my students, but I just want to adopt or adapt something. I think collaboration is also key in that process. If you can reach out to the person who made the material, or if you can just, be comfortable, just getting yourself comfortable working with materials that aren't yours, I think that in itself is a huge process and a great achievement. And I'm so proud of what Deb and I built, but I'm now in the process of working with another group of people who had not seen it, who are teaching that class this semester. And I'm watching their struggle with like what we built and why we built it, and things that I thought were so clear aren't quite clear. But after just a couple little speed bumps where they had some questions for me, they've really been able to be off and running and had to, do very little adaptation, and they were able to move forward. And then some other just kind of final thoughts for my 10 minutes. Strive to be open. And when I say strive, you're going to run into some challenges where you're not going to find the exact material or the exact assessment that you want for free and freely licensed, and that's okay. It's a process, and just like going into any kind of teaching endeavor, it's not going to be perfect the very first time. There's going to be some challenges that you can hopefully overcome. And I think a lot of faculty turn back from the open because free is easy, and they think free is not the same. But that's okay. Start with free. And then strive to be open. And so every semester, as I work on my other classes, I tackle a reading at a time or a unit at a time. And a great example is this semester I've turned a 242 into an OER class, which is, if you're not an American Lit person, that's Survey of American Lit Part 2. So very contemporary readings, not a lot in the public domain. And that's really challenging, because I had to really rethink what I wanted to teach my students, what was important about American literature. And, in some cases I had to strive just to be free, let alone open. And that's okay, because it's a work in progress. And every year more and more readings and materials get put into the public domain, and more authors are buying into this movement and sharing some stories or some parts of their work in some kind of openly licensed way, and that's great. So join now, because it's growing and growing, and more materials are out there. So my last thing, because I think I literally have one more minute, is revise and revise and revise. So an OER class is never finished. And just like some of the frustrations that you'll face as you move in an online environment, so a link breaks here or something disappears or the best video you ever found is just suddenly gone because someone took it down, you'll run into some of those problems here. But there's always something better out there. And so, again, kind of last example of the class, the 112 class that Deb and I built together, we had a little intro reading on privilege, like privilege in the United States. And I thought it was the best reading ever. I was like, that's the best reading. And it went from being free and available to kind of locked down or more locked down. And so we had to go back, and I say we when what I mean is Deb. Deb had to go back and find a new resource for us. And I never thought that revision would be as good, but really it's better. And all the things that we found to replace that material, I think, are resonating more with the students. And we're kind of in that unit space right now. And so it's really exciting to see those new revised materials really working. So, I think if you're the kind of person who wants to teach and kind of walk in the classroom and walk out, OER is not for you. But it's really been amazing to hear the student feedback and how much they like both having all the materials in the class space already ready for them and not having to go out and not having to order their books, but also that they can engage in the materials in a new way and that we can look at things that are contemporary or online in a new way, and that it's all coming together. So that's just a little snapshot of, getting started and what it means to kind of be in an OER class. But I think that the rest of the group, we're going to talk about some of the more broader issues and challenges and opportunities and some of the different fields. So I will turn it over. I believe Sean is going next.
Yes. Okay, so I'll move these slides ahead. All right. This is a little bit of a nerve-wracking interface, but I'm getting used to it. So, and thank you, Jenny, for all of those very interesting points on OER. And basically, I agree with a lot of what she's talked about and a lot of her experiences. And I think that one of the things to keep in mind with going OER in your class is the fact that you can align the materials so well to your own learning outcomes and design your course in a way that really communicates what you want to talk about with the students in your own way. And using OER resources, you can do that even more. So just a little overview of Chem 111 online. The only reason why I'm using this specifically is because to show that, my courses have a lot of customization. I've done a lot of work to align all of the materials directly to the learning outcomes. And basically, it's chemistry is a difficult subject, but if part of my job is to, narrow down the broadness of the topic and then help them know what to focus on, main topics, and how to work with the material and be able to, access and understand better. Now, when I first started with using Lumen, which I'm going to talk about next, I didn't know how I was going to be able to customize my course to the same way, and so just a quick overview. So I use videos mostly in the course because students need to be able to see the discussions and the writing at the same time, and then and also I've done a lot of voice over PowerPoint, and that brings up a copyright issue if you're using publisher slides. So I had to write those. Another interesting part is this Openstax chemistry textbook, and that I had to it's basically, it's in the Lumen interface, and I'll show you that next. And but the students can just read it online, and it's incorporated completely into the course. And so let's. Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with the fact that there are OER courses that are available, and basically they're templates, and they have all of the information for, and there's a large variety of courses, obviously not just chemistry. There's English courses and art courses and all sorts of courses that are available. And when you lots of math courses, when you go to the OER tab in Blackboard, then you can scroll through and you can find courses to look at and determine whether it's something that you would be interested in. Now, when you get that course, you end up with a bunch of web links, and at first it's not readily apparent that it's easily customizable. But all of these tabs can easily be changed and customized to what you are actually looking for. And so, okay, and I think that's basically all I wanted to talk about. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Lee, right?
Yes, here I am.
Okay.
I am going to talk a bit about some things as Jenny described it the other day. The struggle is real. So first, I'm waiting for my slides to show up here. Okay. All right. So, whoops, I went ahead of myself. Oh, where's my green robot? Okay, so I'm calling it Challenges and Solutions. So when I set out to make my first OER composition class, one thing that has sort of seeped into my practice on Blackboard in particular is if I want an image, sometimes I go to Google and sometimes I find really cool graphics, and I confess I don't always credit them as I should. I know that's bad. Lately I've gotten in the habit, though, because now that there's a mashup interface in Blackboard where I can do a search on Flickr for open graphics, I've gotten better, but I'm particularly attached to this little green robot. But as I was preparing this, I realized that this is not an open resource. So, and this kind of illustrates one of the greater issues of using OER or adapting current things that you've prepared into OER and also changing your mindset. So, how do I get to my next slide? Okay, so in a literal way, it's quite easy to find an open robot graphic. You just do a search on Google Images, robot CC BY SA, which is a Creative Commons license. That means something can be shared. I'm still not in the habit of giving good credits, though. But anyway, so I found this little robot, which really is just as good as my green one. In many ways, I think it's cuter. So this is the literal solution. Abstractly, it's not always this easy. If you have a handout or an essay or a podcast or something that you have been using in your courses, I guess pre-OER, and you just sort of glossed it over by saying, oh, fair use. In the open world, you're striving to find things that when they were created and placed out there in the world, they were meant to be shared, meant to be open, reused, rebuilt, and so on. So sometimes it's easy to find a new robot graphic, and sometimes you really can't find something that was comparable to what you were using prior. And so sometimes there's a solution for this, and sometimes it just creates more of a change in a particular unit. Okay, so my next one is the second challenge, knowledge and training. So faculty are eager sometimes to get rid of their textbooks, but there's this, and that's the first step. But the second one is not necessarily a step. It's more like just kind of an ongoing training exercise, because you have to learn how to locate quality course materials that are open, that are legal for use, reuse, remix, rebuild, etc. And that is a whole process of learning. The VCCS offers a professional development course called Pathways that introduces faculty not only to resources, but how to find them and how to customize them to your particular course and needs. And the course was actually adapted from a course that is available on Lumen's website, which you can click on that and go see it. So to take this a step further, at Germana, which is where I teach, we have just finished writing the policy for our OER courses, and it hasn't been approved yet, but one of the things that we put in there is that faculty teaching OER courses should have completed the Pathways course. So you can't simply just say, oh, I'm not going to use a textbook anymore, and then head over to the Xerox machine. And the next thing is know your discipline. And the only discipline that I truly know is obviously English. And in my discipline, there are some definite benefits and there are some big drawbacks. One of the things that I've discovered in my wanderings is there is a preponderance of copyright material just sitting out there on the internet. Entire books that have been scanned. The Catcher in the Rye, for example. And I've noticed that some of the guilty parties are well-meaning middle school and high school teachers in particular. And again, they may be doing this in good faith with a vague knowledge of fair use. But when something has been up there on the internet for a couple of years, that's probably not the spirit of fair use. So one thing is, yes, you can find modern works if you're teaching English Lit, for example, or American Lit, but you know that what you're finding there is a copyright violation, and just because someone else has plopped it up there. With your knowledge, the dangerous thing, you can't in a good spirit and in the spirit of OER use it. So there's that, and that's pretty big, because if you're teaching, as Jenny said, contemporary literature, the popular works, the well-known works, the works that we teach are not open. They're still very much under copyright. On the upside, there are just a plethora of online resources for grammar and writing. And most of them are created by colleges and universities, and they are online writing labs. I guess the most well-known one is Purdue's online writing lab. It is useful, it is free, it is accurate. However, just like anything on the web, some of it is inaccurate and some of it is not user-friendly. And by that, I mean it is probably not conducive to some of our students reading it on their computer screen. There's a lot of information crammed in on one page, for example, so you do have to be judicious. And whatever your discipline is, math, sociology, anthropology, psychology, chemistry, biology, I've noticed that each one has its very specific benefits and drawbacks in the way that the people in the discipline have chosen to create and share resources. And these are just sort of the three things that come to mind, but I guess if my parting message to everyone is it's a process, it's something to experiment with, and it can be very exciting not to be confined to a 200-page textbook, and even more, this is the first semester that I have taught in a long time when I did not get emails from students saying that they had ordered the book and it was not going to arrive for 2 weeks, or 2, the bookstore had run out of the book, or 3, their car's battery is dead and they had to buy a new car battery and they couldn't afford to buy the book for 2 weeks. So all of that goes away, and that's pretty huge. So thank you very much, and I'm now going to turn you over to our shepherdess of OER, Cheryl Huff.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Jenny and Sean. I'm going to look for my slides. Yeah, there they are. Well, I decided to go last because I've been working with these particular colleagues for years. We were early adopters for distance learning, and I got involved in peer reviewing and training with these people, and I knew the experience of working collaboratively was a whole lot more interesting than just doing things on my own. So when I started to look at my courses and all the problems that we've all discussed with students not buying textbooks, being really miserable with the materials that the publishers were offering, the prices of books skyrocketing, I began to see that open educational resources were a coming and exciting phenomenon, and which thrilled me, but I also wanted to be sure that I could continue collaborating with my colleagues. I got involved with a grant-funded project 2 years ago to design 12 of the highest enrollment courses across the VCCS, and I designed an English 112, completely OER, and I got to know other people around the state who were creating OER. And then last year, Richard Sebastian came to me and told me that he'd been awarded a grant by the Hewlett Foundation, and the chancellor had matched it to create more Z degrees around the state. Now, there are Z degrees that have been developed at Tidewater and J. Sargent Reynolds and Nova's Eli previously, using grant funding and through a lot of collaborative work among faculty. But the problem we were having was scaling this across the state. So with the Z23 program, Z23 refers to Z degrees, or zero textbook cost degrees. 23 is the number of community colleges around the state, and we now have 16. I'm seeing that people are having trouble hearing, so I'm going to turn up my mic a little bit and hope that helps. So we have 16 colleges around the state participating in a grant, and each college is working toward creating the courses that will make up a Z degree. In other words, their courses have zero textbook costs and will be open, and then all of these courses will be able to be shared around the state. So I think you all know why OER, but for a lot of us, for the faculty, what I have found is that control over and engagement with materials is one of the premier reasons why faculty get involved in OER, and I think that that's the reason most of us got involved in OER. So what I'm doing is I'm traveling around the state, and I'm working with faculty who are designing OER courses. Now, some of them came in on this. Some of them were actually sort of voluntold over the summer that they would be doing this in the fall. So when they walked in the fall with plenty to do already, the idea of having to create open educational resource courses by spring was a little daunting. But what I also found is that, like a lot of things in education and technology, people kind of fall into the pioneer, settler, and immigrant categories. The pioneers are already out there doing this, and I was, and these people up here with me, some of them were. And some people came after the pioneers, and I call them the settlers, like they're saying, oh, you've already dug the well and built a few roads and have some fences, I'll join you. And then the immigrants are the ones who sort of end up having to do it. They end up there and they're not really sure why. So the way that we've been approaching it, we have a great many materials that are already created. And I think that one of the first stages we try to get people doing is adopt materials and adapt them. And we help them find out where they can find these materials and how they can use them. So I'm giving workshops at various colleges in different regions, different parts of the state to help people do that. I'm seeing some of the comments that you can't hear me. Is it a problem now? All right, I'm hoping that's better. Someone said they could hear me better. Okay, good. That sounds like you can. All right. This is another means we're using to communicate with people, but there are a lot of resources on here that anybody can use, and all you have to do is type in the URL edtech.vccs.edu, and this is Richard Sebastian's blog, but we have a Z23 page on it that we took over, and you can see their list of resources. He's actually updated it since I made this slide because he's sneaky, but it's basically the same place. It's just set up a tiny bit different than this picture. So I would welcome you to go and see. The interim results of the Z23 grant goes until the end of May, beginning of June, and we will see the results of the piloting of about 100 plus courses from 16 different institutions. We will have the beginnings of 6 new Z degrees, including business, liberal arts, ADJ, liberal arts, social science, and we've had the participation directly of about over 100 faculty members on the Z teams themselves. But what's happened is we've got a bunch of settlers who've come in and joined us, and those faculty members are building OER courses without the benefits of the grants. So that's been very exciting. And you can see that they're sort of scattered around. Also, we had piloted courses in fall of 15, and now we have more piloted courses happening this spring. So we will have results by summer. Obviously, we want to sustain this. Oops, that's Sean's slide. We want to sustain this, and we want to keep growing this program. And there will be more programs for helping to develop OER. The challenges are it's time sucking, really, designing OER courses, and we know that faculty want to be compensated for what they do. They never get compensated quite as much as they want to, but they deserve some recognition in terms of a stipend, or they deserve recognition in the form of release time or something that will allow them to develop these courses. Just like we did with distance learning course development, we had to create policies, we had to create infrastructure at our colleges to support this and sustain it so that it will continue to grow in the way that we want it to grow. We want there to be peer review. We want there to be training and workshops for it. So it's a very exciting wave happening in the state, and I suspect that most of you are pretty familiar with OER, but what we'd like to do is just take some questions now from everybody. So I'm going to throw this back to all of us, basically, and allow you to ask any questions that you want to ask.
We're spellbound.
I thought I fell in a black hole there for a minute. It just got really quiet except for the waterfall.
Yeah, if you all want to, if you're trying to talk, you don't realize you're on mute, remember to press your M key to unmute before you try. Or just wave your hand and we'll know at least you're trying.
It's kind of hard to see the crowd over the presenter screen, so I'm just going to jump up and look at you all. Oh, yeah, that's good. Okay. So what are your questions?
Or maybe if you're doing OER, would you jump with your spacebar? Stacy jumped. Ooh, good jumping. So if not a question, maybe a comment about your experience?
Yeah, does anybody want to share what they're doing in OER with us?
I have a question.
Great.
You mentioned the time factor. Is this realistic for busy faculty who may be barely keeping their head above water now? Is the time invested at the beginning save in the long run? I mean, the upside for faculty to really get involved in this. I mean, we can see the upside to students. That's great. But on the faculty side, is that an obstacle too hard for some to overcome?
I'll take that one. If faculty are just beginning with this, there are now a wide range of materials that are open and available. And if you want the shortcut, you can go to the lumenlearning.com website and browse through their catalog and get an idea of what's already there to just actually pull into Blackboard and use, or pull into Canvas and use. The LTI that Lumen has worked with is user-friendly in both Canvas and Blackboard, and in fact, Lumen's developer, Bracken Mossbacher, came from developing Canvas with Instructure. So it all works very well. And those materials are robust so that a faculty member who would want to use those materials wouldn't have a whole lot of work to do. When you hit a point like Sean, where something isn't yet developed, and we call that a build, where you're going to have to be building your course from scratch, that's a tremendous amount of work, and it's not realistic for someone who doesn't have some release time or some way to be able to do that. But every semester we have more and more and more materials that are being developed, and they're openly licensed and available, like Sean's materials. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Probably then you need to change from shepherdess to apostle. Get the word out and let people know. I mean, I know there are a lot of things that have gone out within the VCCS about it, but at the same time, you know how people tend to get those large emails and delete them. I know they do about the Fantastic Conference, but other things too. Yeah,
we'll be at New Horizons with the VCCS people, but we're also hoping to be at OpenVA, and I work with Anita Walls at Virginia Tech on a lot of stuff. I'm going to be doing a conference with Steve Greenlaw at Mary Washington. You're going to be a mix of both community college and the 4 years. So, yeah, open your emails when they say OER. Any other comments about your experience with OER, or your questions about where to get started?
I'll jump in for a second if that's all right. This is Stacy Forgy.
Stacy? Hi. Can you right-click and go to Voice and put it on Shout, or walk over here to the podium?
Okay, I'm on Shout now. Is that better?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to share my experience. So I'm at Tidewater, and what we've done in the sciences at my campus is instead of jumping full into OER from the get-go, is that we're sort of scaling this up more for labs first, because it made more sense for us to do it with labs, since a lot of the content that we were using was stuff that we had written on our own anyway. So we've been working with Lumen, and we have an awesome website for our course with our materials that we're Creative Commons licensing, and it's been a lot of work, but I think so far it's been pretty good. And I like that I've been able to sort of create this material that's very specialized for us, but then also that we're creating other versions so that even though we're all doing the same lab, we can all kind of modify it to what we want to do. And it's actually working a little better than a lab manual for us at this point, I think. So it's been interesting.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Stacy, for sharing that with us. Yeah, Lumen's had a long relationship with Tidewater, developing OER, particularly, of course, the business C degree they have, but also a lot of the courses that had to be completed by all the students at the PCC. So that's great to hear. And it's a great example that so much more is coming. So anyone else, will we wrap up here? Okay, sounds like we're done.
Thank you all.
Thanks, folks. Have fun.